from my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for clicking on our link. We're going to get you into this weekend right. So first off, a couple of just notes to start off. Whole week of podcasts are up on iTunes, Spotify, Speaker, wherever you get your podcasts. You can go find those there. We broke down the Grammys. We broke down the Super Bowl. We broke down pretty much everything. We got into a bunch of different topics. So you can go find all of those. All those are out for you right now. You can go check those out. This one, we're talking about the NBA All-Star selections. Those came out Thursday, so we're talking about on Friday a little bit. Got some news and notes regarding that. And we're going to start off from the top. I want to talk about the NBA All-Star Game format because, you know, we talk about Major League Baseball. They have their All-Star Game. They messed it up when they said this one matters, this one counts. If you win it, the winning team, American League or National League, was going to get home field advantage in the World Series. And we saw that actually matter. We saw that actually sway some World Series. Texas Ranger fans probably would agree that, you know, not having Game 7 at home matters. So they messed their whole situation up there. I think they've kind of tried to fix it, but it's a difficult thing once you let that genie out of the bottle. You look at professional football, who it's really hard for the NFL to have an All-Star game or a Pro Bowl game when this game takes lives, when you get CTE from hitting people over and over and over again, and especially when this is their vacation time. All the teams, all the players who are in the Pro Bowl are not playing in the Super Bowl. They have nothing left to play for. If anything, a lot of them are trying to go kick back and a beach somewhere and have their agents restructure their contracts. So what it is a lot of the time. And before it used to be in Hawaii, so at least it was, fun. You had a vacation, you get to go to Hawaii. Now it's in Orlando, which, no disrespect to Orlando, it's not Hawaii. So you look at this NBA All-Star game, and the only thing it's really been good for recently is recruiting other superstar players. So LeBron goes to the All-Star game. He says, hey, Wade Bosch, we're doing this summer. Wink, wink. Okay, cool. Hey, Paul George, we're going to L.A. to play for the Clippers. We're going to try to team up. Wink, wink. Okay, cool. Like, it's good for building superstar teams. It's really good for networking with your other star players. It's really good for convincing people to come want to play with you. It's not very good for the fans and for the entertainment standpoint. I heard one person say last year that they thought the celebrity game was more competitive than the actual All-Star game because they play hard for the first 2 minutes. The starters sub out, and then you get hard play in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes, 3 minutes left. And then they say, okay, well, now we're going to play together. Now we're going to win. And it's really hard. If you ever played basketball before, I'm not saying that I'm like some guru here, but I'm telling you, if you've ever played basketball before, you run with 5 guys just random in a gym, in a YMCA gym. The first hour is going to be tough. You're trying to figure out where everybody is. If you're playing with strangers, you don't know who can shoot, who can't. With the NBA, it's a little different. I think people know, hey, Trae Young, he's a shooter, watch out. Steph Curry, hey, he's a shooter, watch out. Oh, LeBron gets you on the post, there's nothing you can do. So it's a little different there, but I still think it's hard, especially when you talk about, and we're going to get into this, the 6 first-time All-Stars. It's going to be hard for some of these guys to figure out, okay, where are you going to be? Am I going to pass you the ball? What type of, are we even going to run an offense? Or are we just running ISO the entire time? So from a fan point of view, it's really difficult. So the NBA has had this problem recently trying to convince fans to, hey, we're a competitive game. Hey, this is a fun game to watch. Hey, tune in to TNT to watch us play. I don't think the ratings have been good for the last 5 to 7 years. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can remember every year them talking about, are people even watching this? Is anybody ever entertained? And I'll say this. It's fun for the first quarter. It's cool to see the first quarter, the dunks and the three-pointers and everything. But when you get into the third quarter, you get into halftime, I'm kind of ready to check out. Hey, what's on the next channel up? Oh, it's Rizzoli and Isles. Okay, let me check that out. But for the most part, it's been a cotton candy type of all-star game. So we have the passing of Kobe. That happens on Sunday. So NBA basketball, the NBA has to come out and do something to tribute. And I thought it would be really cool. Okay, the LeBron team wear 8 jerseys. the Giannis team, who are both the team captains, you guys wear 24 jerseys, and the entire time we'll have a Kobe number because he's the only player in NBA history to have 2 numbers retired at the Staples Center. So you think, okay, that makes sense. Or, hey, the first team to 81 points, they get like an extra, $100,000 or whatever to give to charity. Cool. Like, great. That makes sense. I'm okay with that. But what the NBA did was they did something completely different. And I'm going to read you the rules for this new format because I read them a handful of times yesterday when they came out, and it didn't make any sense. It didn't click with me. So I'm going to read it to you guys, and you guys can tell me if this makes sense to you. Point number 1. Both NBA All-Star Game teams will play for Chicago-based community organizations as selected by team captains Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James. Okay, that makes sense. The team captains decide what money goes to charity. Okay, I'm cool with that. The teams will compete to win each of the first 3 quarters, all of which will start with a score 0-0 and will be 12 minutes long. Okay, well, now I'm a little confused. So I played for the first 12 minutes, and at the second quarter, when the minute of the second quarter starts out, we go back 0-0. So you're trying to, I guess now we're playing 4 unique games, and every game is just 12 minutes long. I guess that's the interesting deal. Okay, at the start of the fourth quarter, the game clock will be turned off. Okay, and a final target score will be set. The final target score will be determined by taking the leading team's points cumulative score through 3 quarters and adding 24. The 24 representing the late Kobe Bryant's uniform number. Okay, well, now I'm confused. So now you take the score of the last 3 quarters and put it in addition to 24. That doesn't seem like makes a lot of sense. For example, if the cumulative score of the first 3 quarters is 195, the final target score will be set at 124 points. To win the NBA All-Star Game, the team with 100 points will need to score 24 points in the fourth quarter before the team with 95 points scores 29 and vice versa. Okay, so what they're doing there, I guess, is they're just adding 24 points, and you need to score 24 points at the end of the All-Star Game to win. Okay, well, that makes a little bit of sense, I guess. I guess now it's competitive enough that you're going to want to play defense in the first 3 quarters, or play some sort of defense. You're not going to take terrible shots, hopefully, in the first 3 quarters. The community organization selected by the winner of each of the first 3 quarters will receive $100,000, a total of $300,000 donated to charity for those 3 quarters. The winner of each of the first 3 quarters will be the team with the higher score at the end of the 12-minute quarter. Okay, so I guess every quarter will have a winner. I'm just interested. We're going to get into the players who are on these, like potentially on the teams, and they haven't selected them yet. So we're still waiting to figure out who's on what team, who's on Team Giannis, and who's on Team LeBron. But for the most part, this doesn't seem to make a ton of sense. The winning team in the NBA All-Star Game, i.e. the team that reaches the final target score first, will earn $200,000 for the designated community organization. Here's the other thing too. You're looking at, say, I think the math was like $500,000 potentially goes to a charity, which is a chunk of change for the normal person. NBA is a multi-billion-dollar industry, pretty big company. I know the ratings are down, but I think they have a little bit more than $500,000. I just wish that every time we put this like money sign to it, you're going to get people like me that say, hey, I think there's a little bit more money to go around, and the money will always get boosted up. So, it's good. I'm glad the NBA is doing something for the Chicago communities. I'm glad they're doing something for the city that is organizing the All-Star Game. I think that's pretty cool. How about we put it in a warm weather city so people actually have fun in the cities? I think that'll help a little bit more too, because you go to Chicago in February, I think it's going to be a little cold. So that's the new NBA All-Star format. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I like that they're trying to do something to, mystify and tribute Kobe Bryant. I think they're going to do a lot of stuff. I think this entire All-Star Game is going to be directed towards Kobe, which is interesting because we've done this before. In 2016, when it was Kobe's last All-Star Game, we had a bunch of Kobe Bryant tributes. Now, clearly, it's a lot different, but I wonder, and we're going to have to go back and watch the YouTube clips of 2016. I'm going to be curious how much of that stuff gets recycled, because I think the NBA is not going to make new tribute videos to Kobe. I think they're just going to recycle the old ones, so we'll be interested. The last thing before we get into the starters and the reserves and everybody that got snubbed, I want to throw this last little thing in here. ESPN Thursday night had one of the better documentaries. They had 30 for 30 on Michael Vick. I watched that. We're going to get into that on Television Tuesday, so tune in for that one. But they also had this Kobe Bryant documentary from like 2008 that was directed by Spike Lee. It was really good. And I didn't catch the first part, but I watched pretty much from halfway point probably on. I left the room for a second to go to the bathroom. I came back and they had a boxing match on ESPN. I don't know if that happened to anybody else, but I wanted to slip that in there between everything else because it just didn't make any sense to me. I was so confused what happened. So I got on Twitter and I zoned out for the last 45 minutes before the Michael Vick documentary because I didn't know what the hell was happening. So didn't make any sense. The programming was off too. I didn't get it. I'm very disappointed in ESPN with that. All right, let's talk about the starters and the reserves. We're going to start on the East, and we're going to talk about some of the snubs. So, you already know the starters. It's Trae Young from the Hawks, Kemba Walker from the Celtics, Siakam from the Raptors, Giannis from the Bucks, and Joel Embiid from the 76ers. Now, you look at the starting roster for the East, probably not the strongest starting roster in NBA Eastern Conference history, but it's still pretty good. Giannis has had an incredible season this year. Trae Young is playing with like a new passion, I think, since the passing of Kobe Bryant. His daughter, Kobe's daughter, Trae Young was her favorite player, so you saw him do the tribute, change his number to number 8 on Sunday. Kemba Walker, he has been pretty good for the Celtics this year in a Celtics season that I think a lot of people weren't super excited for outside of Boston. I think a lot of people thought that this team was kind of young. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward still trying to work his way back in. You pretty much sub Kyrie for Kemba Walker. It's incredible what good leadership and a good team player will do to a team now that you get rid of Kyrie, who didn't make an All-Star game because he was hurt most of the year. All right, let's talk about the Eastern Conference reserves, which were announced Thursday. Bam from the Heat, Jimmy Butler from the Heat, Kyle Lowry from the Raptors, Chris Middleton from the Bucks, Sabonis from the Pacers, Ben Simmons from the 76ers, and Jason Tatum from the Celtics. You look at Bam, who I saw one person who doesn't watch NBA basketball complain, a talking head, doesn't watch complain. He said, oh, what has this guy done for the Heat? Well, the Heat are actually pretty good this year. He actually is a defensive player of the year candidate, and him and Jimmy Butler have been dogs. And we talk about Jimmy Butler in the way, that's my mom's favorite player, by the way. Jimmy Butler is just a dog. He played with Tom Thibodeau in Chicago, played with Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, Carlos Boozer to a lesser extent. Those guys all were hardworking, blue-collar. We're going to grit and grind. We're going to play fast with Derrick Rose, but we are grown men playing basketball. Not this, oh, we're passing the ball around, we're having a lot of fun, we're all going to have like Xbox One, whatever, right? We're all going to play Fortnite together. I think Jimmy played in a team that was very focused on winning. Goes to Minnesota with Thibodeau, and those guys are very young, doesn't work out. He fights with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. Then he goes to Philadelphia, which I thought was the perfect city for him. I said, wow, 76ers are a blue-collar city. They are a blue-collar team. Or so I thought. Well, he didn't get along with Ben Simmons. I think people didn't like that he was kind of splitting the locker room between Simmons and Embiid. That's what I was reading. So then he goes to Miami, and I thought, this is probably the last stop for Butler. He won't be relevant in Miami if they're not good. Miami's not a city that is very hardworking. It doesn't feel like a blue-collar city, but he has completely turned it around. He has brought back that 90s era of Miami Heat basketball, I think, where it was just grit and grind, and he has really changed this team to the identity. So I was really happy that I thought he was going to get a reserve spot, but I was really happy he did. Kyle Lowry, NBA champion Kyle Lowry, that's one of the guys that I thought probably could have gotten subbed out. You look at Chris Middleton, another guy who he's an all-star these last 2 seasons. I think more of it has to do with the fact that the Bucks are really, really, really good. Thank you, Giannis. And not the fact that he's really, really, really good. Because, we have so many all-stars at this point. And I don't know why we're not just taking the 15 best players. I don't know why we're still doing it by conference. But I don't think Kyle Lowry or Chris Middleton is better than Bradley Beal or Devin Booker, which we're going to get into in a second. Sabonis for the Pacers. Without Victor Oladipo, I think a lot of people thought the Pacers were going to be a lottery team this year. Sabonis has kind of helped them move and continue to compete for a playoff spot. I was really impressed by that. Ben Simmons, who name recognition alone gets him in. Thank you, fan voting, because if it wasn't fan voting, if it was just players and coaches that voted for these things, I don't think he'd make it. And Jason Tatum, who is the second best player on the Celtics after Kemba. I think he's the best player on the Celtics. I don't think he's the most important, because I don't think you can have that team without Kemba Walker. So, which is really good for Kemba. He's a starter, and he's the most important player on a team that's competing for a championship. You told me 5 years ago that that's what Kemba would turn into. I wouldn't have bought it. Western Conference, clearly the better conference when you talk about star talent. Wasn't always this way. When LeBron moved to LA, that's really when I think the pendulum swung completely in one direction. If you told me name the top 7 players, 8 players in basketball right now, you're looking at the starting lineup for the West plus Giannis. So let's talk about Harden, Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. So 2 Lakers and a Clipper in that starting lineup. All those guys are deserving. Anthony Davis has played lights out since moving to LA. LeBron, of course, he has a new fire. James Harden has had a rough couple of weeks. And the Rockets have had a rough couple of weeks. So that's when we're going to get into who I think should get subbed out. We're going to talk about that. Kawhi, great, and Luka is my MVP so far this season. Rudy Gobert on the reserves. Rudy Gobert from the Jazz, Brandon Ingram from the Pelicans, Nikola Jokic from the Nuggets, who I'm not a big fan of, but I think he deserved it in this case. Damian Lillard, who has averaged like 47 points per game in the month of January, so he has for sure made it. Donovan Mitchell, kind of suspect. Chris Paul, who I'm endorsing, and Russell Westbrook, who I'm not endorsing. So there are 6 new All-Star starters. You look at Bam, Sabonis, Tatum, Brandon Ingram, Rudy Gobert, and Donovan Mitchell. Now, this is really where it gets interesting to me, because you look at the guys that got left off. You're looking at Devin Booker. You're looking at Bradley Beal. I am thinking, in my wisdom, my infinite wisdom, why are the Jazz the most disappointing team in the NBA when you talk about where we expected them to be at this point versus where they are? Why are they a team that has 2 All-Stars? Whereas Devin Booker, averaging 27 points per game and keeping the Suns in a playoff race without DeAndre Ayton for the majority of the season, why do they not have anyone? I am a firm believer in that, Rudy Gobert is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Donovan Mitchell is a very good young player. But the Jazz have been very disappointing. And I don't understand why we are putting those guys in and we're keeping Devin Booker out. Because if you watch basketball, if you've been keeping up with basketball, if you haven't, thanks for listening to the podcast. I will tell you, Devin Booker has been playing lights out. And he's another one of those guys that when we talk about, the legacy of Kobe Bryant, what did Kobe leave to the game? He's one of the guys that Kobe left to the game because he came in the league at 19, Devin Booker did. Immediately was a guy that you could kind of build a franchise around. Now, he didn't play for USA Basketball this summer. That got him a lot of flack. He's never been on a winning team. That got him a lot of flack. But I firmly believe, in watching him this season, because this is the first season that I've stayed up to watch Suns games because I want to see what Booker is doing. The last time I cared about what Booker was doing was when I tuned in and he was dropping 71 on the Celtics. That's the last time I actually cared what Booker was doing. But this season, I've been trying to keep up with Suns games. I'm trying to keep up with the Suns box scores, trying to keep up what Booker is doing, watching highlight tapes. Is he playing good defense? What does he ever shoot mid-range shots? Is he taking bad threes? Personally, I think that he's playing okay defense. I think that he's taking enough mid-range shots, enough back-down shots to, be a competitor in the paint. I think he needs to put in a little bit more weight. I'd love to have him have a little bit more of a mid-range game. I think that's a lost art. If he was able to do that, then I think that he'd be one of the best all-around guards. But for what he's doing for the Suns, a young kid, he's doing pretty good. And I'm really impressed by him. And I'm really disappointed he didn't make it. When you look at Russell Westbrook, he and the Rockets have had a very rough season. I think when we talked about the best teams in the West, I think we got really carried away with how good the Clippers and Lakers were going to be. The Rockets should have been right there, and the fact that they aren't right there, the fact that they feel like a distant third team in the West, kind of tells me that the experiment may not be working in Houston. And they've blown a couple big leads. Harden has had a couple really bad shooting nights. I don't know why they're playing him 35 to 40 minutes a game some nights in December and January that don't really matter in the long scheme of, or the large picture in the grand scheme of things. These games don't matter. So I'm not very impressed by them. But Chris Paul, 100% I give the cosign. When he got traded to the Thunder, we thought that the Thunder weren't going to be a team competing for a playoff spot. We thought the Thunder were going to be a team that was going to bottom out. That has not happened. The opposite has happened. He has done an incredible job in Oklahoma. Those fans love him, and they're competing for a playoff spot. So I'm very, very, very happy with that. So they are going to draft the new teams in a couple of weeks. They're going to figure out what they want to do. Giannis and LeBron are going to pick from the pool of players to figure out who they want, where they're going to put them, and stuff like that. The last thing that I'm going to say is that we are going to get Dwight Howard in the dunk contest, and that's going to be very interesting. And the closer we get to the All-Star game, the more we're going to talk about Dwight Howard and his reemergence, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I got a couple numbers for you. 6 new All-Stars. 8 All-Stars were either traded or moved this offseason. So that's interesting. That's another point to make, that the NBA is continuing to change teams and players. And what does that do to fan support? Do we now just have players, or do we have actual teams that we enjoy watching? I think that for the most part, if you're over the age of 25, you have a team that you have signed up for, that you're a ride or die blank, a Bull, a Laker, a Clipper, a King. And if you're under 25, you have ride or die players, because you're either going to be a LeBron guy, Harden guy, a Westbrook guy, and wherever those players go, you're going to care. Because think, if you look at the All-Star starters for the West, Harden, 2 teams. Luka has only been on 1. Kawhi's been on 3. LeBron's been on 3. Anthony Davis has been on 2. You look at the Eastern starters. You got Trae Young, who's been on 1. Kemba's been on 2. Siakam's been on 1. Giannis has been on 1. Joel Embiid's been on 1. So, like I said, the West has a lot better star power. I think they have better stars, but those stars move around a lot more. And the other thing, and this is what I'll end the podcast on, Spurs, the streak has ended from 97 to 2019. RIP, the Spurs streak of having an all-star play. You had Tim, you had Tony, Manu, DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge. None of those guys make the All-Star game this year. What does that say about the San Antonio Spurs moving forward? Are they going to bottom out? Are they going to be a small market franchise like the Kings? Or are they going to figure it out and still compete like the Oklahoma City Thunder? So, tough scene for the Spurs. You hate to see it. I think they're still going to make the playoffs. I think they find a way to trade some stars, get into the 8th seed, make some noise in that first round against the Clippers or Lakers, and then the season will be over. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to get in here and talk. Sunday, Super Bowl. Monday, Super Bowl reaction. Tuesday, Television Tuesday. Friday, we're having another Film Friday. So, great stuff as always. I will see you again on Monday.